The Pakistani capital, Islamabad, meeting place in late January for foreign ministers of the world's Muslim countries. Delegates from 33 nations came along to discuss developments in one Muslim country which did not attend the conference, Afghanistan. The special Islamic conference was arranged as a swift response to the influx of Soviet troops into Afghanistan at the end of December, an event of particular concern to President Zia of Pakistan. His country shares a long border with Afghanistan, and he is now faced with the prospect of seeing Soviet troops right on the doorstep.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu.
The Islamic delegates took a firm line, condemning and deploring the Soviet action. Member states were urged to withhold all aid and to consider boycotting the Moscow Olympic Games as long as Soviet troops remained in Afghanistan, where the vast majority remained devout and practicing Muslims. Such are the scenes in Afghanistan today, 2 years after a left-wing revolution and just after the dramatic arrival of Soviet troops and a new Moscow-backed government. As in neighboring Iran, Pakistan, and even in the southern Soviet republics, Islam flourishes in spite of changes of political direction in government. The conservative Afghan clergy have been outspoken in opposition since April 1978, when President Taraki, a Marxist, came to power at the head of a Moscow-backed government. After the revolution in Iran, Muslim opposition grew so strong that it posed a serious threat to Kabul. This is the main reason why the Soviet Union acted in such a decisive manner, pouring in troops with a complete disregard for world opinion. Soviet Antonov transport planes with loads of between 45 and 92 tons continue to bring supplies and equipment into Kabul. Military observers say the flights have been at the rate of 12 to 15 a day as backup to the 5 or 6 Red Army divisions now in Afghanistan. It is estimated that there are over 85,000 Soviet troops inside Afghanistan. 2 divisions are reported to be entrenched around Kabul, one airborne and the other a motorized rifle division. 2 other divisions are reported around Herat and the Afghan Air Force base of Shindand towards the Iranian border in the west. The direct supply route is a metalled road built with Soviet aid, running down to Kabul from the Soviet border through the Salang Pass. In spite of the onset of winter, the road is busy, often with T-54 and T-62 tanks. There are said to be over 1,000 of them here, and although Afghanistan can hardly be described as ideal tank country, the mere presence of heavy armor is a big deterrent to poorly armed insurgents. In Kabul itself, there is little sign of the Soviet forces. That familiar claim that life has returned to normal appears justified. But normality for the 15 million Afghans is a hard life, an illiteracy rate of over 80%, an average income of less than $200 a year, and a life expectancy of around 40 years. The country has been traditionally self-sufficient in food, but there have been recent setbacks. A massive exodus of small farmers into Pakistan and Iran as refugees, last year's poor rainfall, and the continuing chaos of new land reforms. Prices have gone up, while the distribution of goods and food have been disrupted by heavy snowfalls and also by people hoarding to protect against an uncertain tomorrow. There have been shortages of meat and bread, and rice stocks have been hit by a warehouse fire shortly after the December coup. The country's foreign exchange reserves in recent years have been bolstered by remittances sent by Afghans working abroad, mainly in Iran. This source, which reached a peak of $418 million a year, has now dried up, while the economy in general has been hurt by cuts in fuel supplies from Iran. No economic decrees were immediately announced in Kabul, but with the West cutting off aid, the Afghan economy must become increasingly dependent on Moscow. So Moscow has a firm economic and military hold on Afghanistan, and its political influence has spread right through People's House, home of the Kabul government. In fact, this is one of the few places in the capital where Soviet guards are regularly seen. Their colleagues have been generally restricted to outlying barracks. Also out of general view are the Soviet advisors, now believed to number some 4,000. They have taken over the Kabul hotel just outside the bazaar area. At first, there were no objections to our camera crew filming them at breakfast time. But it wasn't long before Afghan guards moved in and called a halt to the filming. The question of just who's got the power in Kabul today can be posed at the highest level. The new president, Babrak Kemal, is clearly Moscow's man. He was in Eastern Europe, a virtual exile, while his predecessor, Hafizullah Amin, floundered. But as soon as the December coup was underway, Babrak Kemal was brought back. He has the reputation of being a committed Marxist and a hard man. But he has been taking care not to alienate further the Muslim clergy. He has pledged full religious freedom and no discrimination against any particular Muslim sect. The Amin regime, he said, had not respected Islam. While Babrak Kemal stayed in Kabul, hardly leaving the People's House, his foreign minister, Shah Mohammad Dost, was soon on a visit to Moscow. In the words of diplomacy, he was there to discuss the normalization of domestic policies and to consolidate Afghanistan's sovereignty and independence. He had talks with Soviet Foreign Minister Andrei Gromyko, and their views on recent events were identical. There had been no Soviet invasion of any kind. The Soviet troops had been invited in to combat foreign aggression.
But to say that there was an intervention on the part of the Soviet Union in Afghanistan, but we have made this quite clear in the Security Council and also the General Assembly that we, in Afghanistan, the government, the present one and also the previous ones, we had requested on different occasions, and the present leadership reiterated, reaffirmed that request, and we are grateful to the Soviet Union that they responded positively to our request, and they sent a few limited contingents of the Soviet army to help assist Afghan people, Afghan army, to repel the foreign aggression and threat to our independence, sovereignty and territorial integrity of Afghanistan.
One of the undisputed successes of the December coup was the release of hundreds of political prisoners, among them Mrs. Nur Bibi Taraki, widow of Afghanistan's first Marxist president. She was outspoken in her condemnation of Amin, whose passing was mourned as little as that of his namesake in Uganda. Curiously, it was her late husband who, as president, signed the original friendship treaty used as the justification for sending in the Soviet troops. Soviet television broadcasts regular news items on Afghanistan. Here, a Russian reporter talks to a high official in the Afghan State Security Service, Abdul Qadir Azizi, about the domestic situation before and after the December coup. Azizi said he believed enemies of Afghanistan were trying their best to prevent democratic change from taking place, and they had circulated subversive pamphlets and literature. An assortment of weapons had been captured from these bandits, said Azizi. and the Russian reporter identified most of the arms as of American, British or Chinese manufacture. A group of alleged foreign agents were also put on display. They were described as agents of Western propaganda and imperialism who had been arrested by the Afghan revolutionary authorities. The alleged agents said they were recruited in Afghanistan but trained at a camp near Peshawar in Pakistan. Their instructors had included Pakistani, American and Chinese officers. The soaring mountains and deep valleys of Pakistan's northwest frontier, a massive natural barrier that has only been crossed by proper roads in recent years. Now it's possible to drive up to the historic Khyber Pass and then right across Afghanistan, circumstances and weather permitting. The journey was once a trip of epic proportions, but the 20th century has changed all that. At last, the border with Afghanistan, the long frontier that the Pakistanis hope will not become a line of confrontation between Soviet forces and their own. The problem right now in the border area is how to cope with the thousands of Afghans who have streamed across the border in recent weeks and months. It's estimated that nearly 500,000 Afghans have crossed into Pakistan, and though many may wander back eventually, it still means a big refugee problem for the Pakistan authorities. Some of the refugees have clearly decided they have a long stay ahead of them on the Pakistani side of the border. And for all the newcomers, money changers are among the first traders to be visited. There is so much business and competition, though, that there is always a good price to be found here, whichever way you are traveling.
Yeah, 100 Afghani, 100. 23 rupees and a yeah.
The Afghans are moved away from the border itself as soon as possible. Many make the journey to the plain near Peshawar, down from the Khyber Pass, where a large refugee camp has grown up. Just as the Russians had to move quickly to beat the worst of the winter, so too did the fleeing Afghans. Now they have time to consider their next These mountain people are used to a hard life, and the political side of the whole affair doesn't worry them as much as it worries some outsiders. They are equipped to survive, and they have seen many a foreigner who was not so equipped come and then go again. They are all sure they will be back home eventually. One of the most valued commodities in the camps is firewood. Winter in this part of the world is a yearly struggle, and without a constant fire, you are in trouble. Each head of family weighs out his supply. There are so many refugees, it has to be rationed. As usual, it's the children who suffer most in such circumstances. United Nations officials have found many cases of bronchitis and even some of tuberculosis. Medical supplies are available. The main problem, say the officials, is food, although the situation is not yet critical. But the longer the refugees remain here in such large numbers, the nearer that crisis point will come. The northwest frontier region has seen warfare and bloodshed for centuries, and guns are among the tribesmen's most treasured possessions. Here in Dara town, a whole industry, gun making, has become established, and the weapons are selling today better than ever. In the past, the Pathans have used their guns against rival tribes and against any foreigner who dared to move against them. Now, in their tribal and Islamic fervor, they could be firing their new purchases against the unwelcome Soviet visitor in their homeland. Here, on what's sometimes referred to as the Street of 1,000 Gunsmiths, a wide variety of weaponry is up for sale. Exact copies of British, American, Russian and Czech arms are made here by hand, and they are so good that even regular arms dealers say they cannot always tell the difference. Real craftsmanship, in fact. And, of course, as well as buying your gun in Dara, you can buy locally manufactured ammunition as well. Knowledge of the craft of gun making is passed from father to son on a small family business basis. They will make you a gun to any pattern or requirement.
This one, 3 nuts. How much?
7.62.
7.62.
This pistol is a reproduction of a standard Czech model. With the fighting in Afghanistan, these locally produced arms are in great demand. They even make a small, sophisticated pen gun.
Bullet in the top of the pen, yeah. Screw the cap back on it. What, you just press that?
Yes.
Some pen. That says made in the USA.
But made here.
But made here. You copy everything down to where it's made. Yeah.
For the dealer seeking weapons, they are plentiful in Dara, as long as you have the necessary cash.
How much do you pay for that gun?
2,000.
2,000.
Yes, different quality. 2,000, 3,000.
And how many have you bought? Have you bought many guns?
Yes.
For Afghanistan?
Yes, many guns.
How many?
About 30,000.
30,000.
Yes.
That's a lot of rupees. Where does the money come from?
This come America.
From America.
Yes. Saudi Arab.
And Saudi.
Yes, and China, Japan, every country. Yes.
A traditional dance by Pakistani soldiers for important visitors. Pakistan is hardly in a position to flex its military muscles at present. Though its army is 400,000 strong, most of its equipment dates back to the 1950s. It's a point not lost on the visiting British Foreign Secretary, Lord Carrington. Britain has been one of the closest supporters of President Jimmy Carter in his strong line against the Soviet Union. Pakistan is in great need of more military and economic aid, and the alarm in Western capitals over Soviet expansion could be translated into money and arms for President Zia. He would like the West to give him new aircraft, anti-aircraft and anti-tank weapons. America has promised $400 million worth of direct military aid. And though President Zia is reported to have called that peanuts, he's still hopeful of getting most of what he wants.
Is he the only one here who was in the He looks like one, doesn't he?
It's not just the Western nations who are worried about Pakistan's security at the moment. Their concern was shared by an important visitor from the East. The Chinese Foreign Minister, Wang Hua. He toured the refugee camp at Azakel, north of Peshawar, and he described the Soviet move into Afghanistan as the biggest threat to the security of the region. He accused the Soviet Union of planning to make further incursions into areas adjacent to Afghanistan. Elsewhere among the refugees, there are constant reminders of the Afghans' Islamic devotion. Even in a rough camp, without the usual amenities, the rituals of daily prayer are scrupulously observed. A simple mud wall represents for these refugees the walls of a mosque, and the prayer session is as fervent as any in the finest building. Muslim religious leaders are often seen in the border area. Following the example set in the Iranian Revolution, they have been talking about a holy war against their enemies. It is possible that Islam could be the unifying force to bring different tribes together, to make Muslim warriors out of disaffected tribesmen. This is the hope of one of Afghanistan's main religious leaders, Sibghatullah Mugadadi. He has already drawn up what amounts to the declaration of a holy war against the latest unwelcome visitor.
We welcome you. The following points are decided by the tribal leaders of the Paktia province and their followers. My followers as well as my tribe. First, many political parties claim that I am associated with them. It is not accurate. I'm not a politician, and this is not a political war. This is a holy war. I have helped them in the past, sending my men to war. It is our responsibility to defend Islam in our nation. Number two, we reject Comrade Karmel, the Soviet governor to Afghanistan, for asking a political peaceful solution. This is not a political question, rather this is a religious and holy war. We want the Soviet murderers out of our land or pay with their life. We will destroy them in every corner of our country. Point three, we welcome assistance from the Muslim nations in free world, long as there's no condition. We know their future is also in jeopardy. Point four, to the political parties in Peshawar, those who does not unite within a week will not be allowed to enter our land.
Mugadadi's words were translated by a tribal leader, Saeed Fahad al-Rahman al-Husseini, who passed on a special appeal for help.
We have been told by many nations that they will help us And also what you are doing now, you probably can take our message across the world. We want assistance from anybody who can give us help in this time of despair. One of the
Whether the divided Afghan rebels can wage an effective guerrilla war against the Russians will probably become apparent in the spring thaw. Meanwhile, as the icy winter wind blows through Kabul, the Afghanistan crisis threatens to open up a new era of Cold War between the Russians and the West. It could well be that events in this poor Central Asian state have set a pattern for the politics of the 80s. Détente between the superpowers is in tatters, and the Islamic world has begun to respond to what it sees as the threat of atheistic communism. Meanwhile, the Soviet Union is facing ever-widening opposition in the world outside. The boycott of the Moscow Olympics, which seemed unlikely at first, looks increasingly probable. American resolve, too, is hardening, with the country uniting behind President Carter as never before. Despite all this, there's not the slightest sign so far that Moscow is prepared to back down. The Soviet military presence in Afghanistan is now far too big to be pulled out in a hurry. Whatever the rest of the world may say, the Russians seem quite prepared to settle down for a long, hard winter.